In the previous lesson, we created a new blank database, and that's why we have the screen that we see here in front of us. If you're jumping to this lesson, you might want to go back to the previous lesson and just get caught up with us here. It's very quick and easy. When we create a new blank database, something different in Access happens that you might not be used to when using other applications. We had to give our database a name before we actually create it. So we see that name up here. It's Music Library, and that's on the title bar. And the other thing we did by default was accepted the brand new format, which is Access 2007 database format. Now keep in mind that this format is not compatible with previous versions of Access, but we were feeling safe with that and we accepted the default format. Another thing that happened by default is a brand new table is created for us. By default, it's named Table 1 until we save it and give it a new name. And you can see it's waiting for us here to add new fields to this table. So we obviously can't have a database without having a table and some data in it, and that's why this happens by default when we launch a brand new blank database. One other thing happened up here on the ribbon you might have noticed is we've got a new tab, and it's called Data Sheet. You see Table Tools shows up just above it, and we've got a number of table tools or related commands to working with tables because that's what we're doing right now, creating a brand new table. We've got the Views button, Fields and columns. There's commands related to working with fields and the columns in our table. We've got another section here for choosing data types and formatting our fields. We're going to get into that shortly. We even have a relationship section that we're going to talk about a little bit later on in this title. So right now, let's get back to creating our brand new table. Of course, we're going to go back to our design process that we did on paper, take a look at the tables we need, create our first table, and select the fields that are going to go in here. Well, you can see it says add new field, and right now it's waiting for actual data. So if we wanted to rename this actual field from add new field to something different, it's pretty easy. We just right click up here and we go down to rename column. So our first column we actually want to call the album title. So I'm going to type in album title. And when I hit enter, you can see automatically a new column is created for me where I can insert another new column name. And this is the field, so we're going to go down to artist. And this is all from our paper design. The next one, rating. Then we're going to put in condition. The location of the album. Each time I'm pressing enter to move on to the next. And the media that it's stored on. Okay, so we don't need this extra column, so when I hit enter, it's waiting for me to type in a name, but I don't need that. Over here where it says ID, I'm going to right click, and I'm going to rename this column. I'm just going to add a little bit to it. This is going to be our album ID. And I'm going to hit enter. So there we go. Now it's waiting for us to actually enter some data. So a new album ID, a title, artist, etc. But before I start doing that, I want to think about what's going into each of these fields. And you can see by default, if I look up here under data type and formatting and with album ID highlighted, the data type by default is set to auto number. So if I want the numbers to show up here automatically as I add new albums just to number them for me, I know that I'm not going to get any duplicates. So every album ID is going to be unique, which is what I need. And then I can just start entering the rest of the data without worrying about choosing numbers to show up for my ID. I'm going to leave it at auto number. Take a look at some of the other options. It could be text, a memo field, which allows me to put in more text than a text field. It could be numeric, where I'd enter numbers. Keep in mind when you put in numbers, they're usually numbers that you're going to use in a calculation as opposed to things like phone numbers or ID numbers. It could be dates and times. It could be money, currency. It could be a logical field, which is a yes or a no. It could even be a hyperlink. So we're going to leave it at auto number. And the other thing that's important is that because this is going to be our primary key and it has to be unique, we want this checked off over here, which is the unique box. Is it required? Well, yes it is, but we don't need to check that off because it's a primary key. So every one of our records is going to have something in that field. The other formatting buttons relate to the actual numbers that might go in there, but we're going to leave it just as is. It's now time to save this, even though we haven't entered any records. It might be a good idea to save what we've done so far. I'm going to go up to my Quick Access tool. That's short for going to the Office button and choosing Save from there. And I'm going to click the Save button. And you can see by default the name Table 1 does show up. But, of course, I want to call this something different. This is my album table. And when I click OK, or press enter, I now have a brand new table called album. I see it over here in the list of all my tables. There's just the one right now, and I'm ready to start inputting data. So our very first step is complete. We've created our brand new table, and now we've entered each of the fields that will appear in this table. We've chosen our primary key. We've even chosen some formatting. We can go through the rest of these fields deciding on their formatting. Look what happens when I click on each of these columns. You can see the default data type that is assigned to them. The album title is by default a text field. That's not going to be unique, but it is required, so I'm going to check this box. The artist is also text. Should be required. A rating is by default text, and you can see I'm going to click the drop down here and I'm going to change that to a number. So I'm going to have a number rating, and I'm not going to do anything else. It's not unique, it's not required, but it is going to be a number. The condition, text field, location, media, and of course we don't need any more fields other than that. So I think we've got everything set up. Again, another save. It's going to save or update our changes if we've made any. Notice that only the first time are we prompted for the name of the table. From then on, we're just updating the existing table. So we're ready now to start inputting some actual data, that is, entering data into each of these fields. We're going to do that next.